Hello, and welcome to Vow, Voices of Wisdom, the show that might not be for everybody, but everybody needs to watch this show. It's good being back into the studio. I've been out of the studio for a few months. So, just a reminder, Vow is about relationships, and I generally like to just read a little of this about relationships. Relationships are universal simply because they are all that exists. Nothing has meaning until you decide how it relates to you or how you relate to it. It is the process of making these associations that would determine the outcome of experiences in life. In the name of authenticity, today my guest and I are going to share our experience we had after we went to see the film Lee Daniels-The Butler. So I want you to welcome today Nina Beaty. Hi, Nina.
Hi, Brenda.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
So before we start getting into our experience we had, first of all, I just commend you for doing this because today we're going to talk about some really upfront and personal truth about really what happened. And I think it's going to be a good thing for people who see this about how important it is to really be real with each other, but to respect each other at the same time. So first of all, tell us a little background about yourself.
Oh, I don't know, you mean like just personally?
I know you're an art therapist.
I'm an art therapist, and I guess I grew up in the city in Manhattan and went to pretty liberal schools, and then I worked in county hospitals and with HIV/AIDS, and I think social things have sort of been always around me, and I married two foreigners, so I'm kind of, guess I like different experiences. Yeah.
Well, you know, what we want to talk about is really actually what happened for me during and then for us after the film, you know, when we saw the film. And I'm sure everybody knows it or maybe have seen The Butler. If you haven't, you must go see this. So I don't want to give away it all. But basically, we know it was about, Lee Daniels was the producer of the show. And it was about, I think it was Cecil Gaines played by Forrest Whitiker. And it was really about, trying to make sure I have his name now, Eugene Allen, the true story of Eugene Allen being a butler at the White House under, I think they said 8 presidents. And during the showing, first of all, we were going to have a girls' night out.
Right.
So just want to be specific about what who it was. It was my friend who is black, African American, and Nina invited another friend of hers who is white.
Right.
So we're gonna have a girls' night out, and afterwards we're gonna go to dinner and hang out.
Right.
So during the movie, I had no idea the effect it was gonna have on me. It was at times when I cried, it was times where I was angry. I had no idea it was going to affect me the way it did. And just to give me, and I'm trying to figure out whether I should go first or you should go first about how it affected you. Maybe I should go first.
I think you should.
I think I should go first.
Yeah.
I think the first scene when the young boy father got shot was my first effect. I think when I think back on it, that was the first one. And then also seeing his mom, actually the father was trying to save his wife from being raped by the master, and that's when he got shot. And then when she got raped, she kind of lost her mind or whatever. And so basically, in one shot, quote unquote, literally, he lost his mom and his dad. And then that was the beginning of me trying to go through my process of this. It was kind of devastating. But I think what happened to me, I could really relate to a lot of the things that happened in the movie because I thought about my mom and dad when we lived in Southampton, how they didn't want us to go up Job's Lane for some reason. I couldn't figure out why. But after looking at that movie and thinking back on it, it was a fear to protect us. That was what it was about. So I thought about that when I was looking at the movie. And then also, I used to actually do parties in the village of Southampton. And I used to serve parties. And so when he said something in the movie about you're silent and you don't speak, you just serve, I literally had to do that. You know, and I witnessed and heard a lot of stories and things that happened. I give one incident. Yeah, I will. I was serving at this table, and it was an incident. I said, this show's going to be kind of raw, so I hope everybody can handle this. I was going around serving, and this woman was saying that her nanny had taken her little boy to get ice cream, and he was dressed to go to some kind of event. And I guess she must have served him chocolate ice cream, and he got his outfit messed up. Right. And so she says she slapped her. And as I'm serving, going around serving these people, I'm hearing this conversation, and when she said that, I literally almost dropped the platter. And I don't know if I'm going to share this part. I was very upset that it happened, so I kind of did a little something to my part to give a little revenge. I got a little something on her clothes. I'll just say that. But I'm being very honest and open about this, of my experience and the experience you go through. And so that was part of what I went through that was very upsetting to me. And then there was the place of seeing the people being mistreated, the unfair pay. Anyway, the more, and then they brought in the civil rights movement when they showed them being hosed down and all that. So it really just, I had no idea it was going to affect me the way it did, but it did. So then afterwards, the movie was over, and we were supposed to go to dinner, and we did manage to go to dinner, but I did not want to go to dinner.
Right. Oh.
I really didn't. I kind of whispered to Debbie. This is the first time you kind of hear this.
Yeah.
I whispered to Debbie, I can't do this. Oh. And Debbie said to me, come on, Brenda, let's just go to dinner. Oh. And I looked at her like, no, I don't really want to go, because I didn't really want to be. I'd be honest with you. Like I said, this is a raw show, everybody. At that moment, I didn't want to be around white people.
Right. Okay.
That's exactly how I felt. So we went to dinner, and we went to a local restaurant in East Hampton, and I was not a nice person sitting at that table. But the point I wanted to make was, generally, what was going through my mind at the time was, I knew, Nina, you felt uncomfortable. And I felt bad that you would feel uncomfortable. But at that moment, I said, I don't care that she doesn't feel uncomfortable. I'm going to stay where I am because I'm upset. And I have a right to feel upset. I'm always deciding that, okay, I want to make somebody else feel better and not, deal with what I was dealing with. Right. And Debbie, who was my friend at the time, was at the dinner, she helped the conversation. Thank God for her. Yeah. So how did that whole experience make you feel at the table?
Well, I was upset that my friend was upset. I mean, I think that's meaning you. Okay. That there was nothing. You had basically said when you got out of the movie, I don't want to talk. Right. You said, I don't want to talk. But I didn't know if I guess in a way I was like a little slow, because I was like, well, does she really not want to talk? Or just at that moment as we walked out of the movie theater. So when we got to the restaurant and then you were just still not really wanting to talk, I felt, I really didn't know what to do. I mean, I realized how much we're socialized, we're sitting at a table, we must talk. Yeah. And even though I know you were going through your stuff, I thought, well, you would still participate, but you weren't. And so, but Debbie was really, she was playing the game. She was talking to me, and I felt like, okay. I realized how much, we're really set up to kind of do things, kind of be smooth and have everything be okay.
Exactly.
Both of us.
Exactly.
So Debbie helped out in that way, but it was in the car going home that I felt the devastation of my inability to shut up. Basically, like I could not sit in your pain, in the silence. I didn't know if you wanted silence, so I tried to have a light conversation about the movie, and that's when you turned on the music. You turned on like smooth jazz radio, and that was, a quiet message to say, be quiet. We're just going to listen. Now look at what you said. You said, we are going to listen. So, and then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to say anything. She didn't want me to say anything. So I had to literally be with my own pain in the back seat of the car. feeling. Yeah.
So you felt pain as well. You felt pain that there was no conversation, or what was the pain?
Well, I wasn't sure what was going on with you, and I'm trained as a therapist, so even though I knew you could have your feelings, the thing is I wanted to know what those feelings were.
Right.
And I kept waiting to see if you were going to finally share a little bit about what was going on with you. And so I was just, it was just, as it was unfolding, I realized finally that to just be quiet and that you were not ready to speak.
And I can't help but mention the question you asked.
Oh, God. All right.
We're going to be more open,
okay.
right?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Oh, you mean the Oprah question?
Yes.
Okay. Well.
So you got to remember that the whole thing was being quiet, We just want to no comment, no question, no conversation. And Nina says from the back.
I said, it's sort of interesting that, Oprah had such a big part in the movie, because if she hadn't been an actor in the movie, she would have definitely probably been in one of the TV segments, like somewhere in the background of the movie, as part of, showing the history of the times, because she was a big figure and her shows were on the time, and I felt that family would have watched Oprah. So I thought that was sort of a little comment, an interesting comment, and it was like, I don't know what you did, but that's when I knew to really shut up. And I talked to Carolyn, that was my friend who went with us, and I said, okay, so what was she? And Carolyn the next morning said, well, that was a really stupid comment.
Oh, she did say that?
Oh, yeah, she.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She said that was really, really stupid, and I said,
wow.
And she goes, yeah, come on, Nina. I mean, Oprah's the exception. She's not. This movie is about all the women who were, treated horribly throughout slavery, and you're picking the one woman. And I went, okay. So, but Carolyn actually brought up, rather than my emotional feelings of trying to rescue you, or try to, make you feel better, which I couldn't, and I was not going to be able to do that, at least not then. She pointed out, it really pointed out that Carolyn studied a lot of history. So she really understood the movie in a different context, or in a broader context than I did. And so my comment was really kind of naive and stupid and ignorant. And I went to a lot of shame that I was so ignorant.
Really?
And that I had made an ignorant comment, and that, but that's the part that I had to deal with for the next couple of days, was just have to say, it's not about my ego. It's like I have to really, if I'm going to be working with Brenda on the museum, there are going to be times when my ignorance will come up, and I just have to deal with it and keep learning. I mean, I'm there to learn. I want to be part of the museum to learn about the history. And maybe it's because I really don't know my history, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get involved with the museum, because it's like a living way of getting to know. Without reading tons of books, I'm going to hear about experiences and look at artifacts and get to know more about the Black experience.
And see, the important thing too, I want to bring out, that you choose to not only open up and take the shame or try to take the pain or whatever, but you open up, you're willing to learn more about, instead of shutting down and judging. Because as we talked before, there's a lot of avoidance with talking about race, And really that's, they said, I watched a few interviews with Lee Daniels, and he said this movie was like a mirror to society. And that was back in, the 50s or whatever, and here we are now in 2013, and, they talk about the Trayvon Martin case now, what happened with that, and all the different things that have happened still now in 2013, and so it makes you feel like, how far have we come? That's the thing, but I really, value our friendship, and I value even us being able to sit here. Don't make me cry today, Nina. I value us sitting here doing what we're doing today, because I'm hoping that people can look at this show today and really look at themselves and understand that you can have a controversial issue, but able to work it out. Without me having to take down, and we talked about that the idea of not losing my identity, and I think it'd be, it's been times through my journey of, you know, working and living, and et cetera, that I went through different changes of trying to keep my identity and not trying to act white, as they might say, whatever. But then there's a time where there's a wisdom of, you know, just being who you are, the authenticity of it all, but still using wisdom to get ahead in life. You know, and that's what we kind of talked about. I want to also mention, it's just coming to me, your experience you had in Chicago.
Right.
When you told me about you going to try to find, I don't know if you want to talk about that on the show, about finding that dress and how you were welcomed.
Oh, yeah. Well, Chicago's a very segregated town. It still is. And so there's a whole Hispanic neighborhood, and they're mainly Mexican, so it's Mexican neighborhood, and then you have the black neighborhood. And I worked for the county, and I also had cases that took me into areas that I think, you know, a lot of white people were saying to me, you know, are you sure you want to go into the projects? Are you sure you want to go there? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, I think growing up in New York City kind of made me be less frightened. I grew up in a huge city. And so for me, it really wasn't so frightening. And I knew, and also one of the people in the projects told me, you know, if anything happens to you, meaning a white person, we don't want any police in here. Trust me, there's enough going on that we will protect you. So I always felt, I was told I was protected, actually, when I would go to visit my HIV patients. But I think one of the things I did was I was quite large then, and so what you were talking about was the dress shop, and there really weren't that many places I could look for clothing to fit my size 22. And so I went down to the black community, and there was this cute dress shop, and the women I was not sure if I should go in or not, because I'd heard stories that, you know, the whites stay with the whites and the blacks stay with the blacks in Chicago. So they were like, come on in, and they made me feel so welcome. And they were like, oh, we'll find something for you here, and it was really, really sweet experience, so, yeah.
Well, see, that's a whole nother thing where basically we have more in common than we do different, you know? And even the movie, The Butler, it really portrayed the black family as just a black family, you know, a husband and a wife and children, you know, and just the realness of what a family, but, you know, like I said, I was reading some of the reviews where they were saying generally that's not usually seen. You know, I think the Cosby Show was maybe the first show that they showed a black family having like a normal life, opposed to showing a poverty of a welfare mother or a child on drugs or dealing drugs, that whole kind of concept. So that was a whole thing that that was made a point of that. Originally, according to Lee Daniels, his movie was generally just supposed to be about a father and son's relationship, which was interesting. But it ended up being a whole other, you know, way of looking at what we went through and what we still have to look at this point. Yeah. So I really, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's really good that the more that we get to see that, the better it is, because I remember being really shocked when I was at the county, and this one woman said, I was feeling all proud of myself that I was getting to know these black families and going to their homes and all this stuff. And they were like, don't fool yourself. They're still they're not being real with you. They'll never be real with you because you're white. And I remember my little heart was so crushed because I was feeling like I was so cool because I was being invited into these homes, and I was working with these families and helping the grandmas and all this stuff. And so even then, even though I was closer than maybe a lot of other white people, somebody black said, you know what, they're still acting because you're white. And you know, and that hurt my, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
What do you think
about that? But the point of that is, because I worked, I think I mentioned you, I worked in that kind of field too. Yeah. And I used to go to some of these group meetings with all the different organizations, and they mentioned, you know, to make a long story short, they would mention that they still weren't able to get what they needed from the black families, and seemed like they weren't making any headway. And they said to me, well, what do you think? And I basically said to them, I had no problem. I said, because I look like them. And I said, unfortunately, for the most part, they don't trust white people. And that's unfortunately what happens. But in the same time, because they had to confide or
Right.
you know, to whatever rules it was to get their paychecks or get their checks, rather, not paychecks, but their welfare checks or whatever they had to do, or not getting their children taken away from them.
Right.
They went with the flow and they faked it.
You know, there was something in the movie that I don't know if it was in the movie or I sort of got it out of the movie, but when they were in the fields, the one thing that the slave masters couldn't do was get inside their minds. So the area of what you really feel and think is the one sacred space where you can just be all, you can have any thought you want, and there no white person can come in and take your thoughts away. And that made me think about, back to that comment that woman said, is that in a way, you know, just for me to be at peace with the fact that, you know, actually, even as a therapist with anybody of any color, you know, really, this is a privileged space what goes on in here. And, you know, to go in lightly, and people don't have to tell you exactly what they're thinking. I think nowadays people have gotten sort of blurting out everything and feeling like they should say everything. And I'm like, no, you don't have to say everything. There's a time and a place, and you have to be in relationship before you can say certain things.
And it's interesting on that topic, on another angle, how I look at that is we have a lot of, in the Black community, especially in the older age, like my parents' age and older, they still had that slave mentality. And it was unfortunate that some of it was passed on or tried, you know, that influence and that, you know, that fear was kind of in the household, and that, you know, influence was almost passed on to us. And it was a protection. It wasn't even about, you know, trying to change our minds, but I'm telling you about the mindset was, you know, you can't go up Job's Lane because you might be accused of stealing, or maybe they experienced. I never knew really, literally what my parents really experienced as a child growing up in that era. Maybe they saw things that I didn't know they saw. But it was a thing where I fought it because I saw it in them. And even sometime now, I struggle with some people that still have that mindset that they feel like they're gonna separate themselves. On the reverse of that. Yeah. They're going to separate themselves because they don't care about us, and they're not going to ever do anything for us. And, you know, it's kind of a reversal of a mindset of being renewed that you can. You know, you have to get past all of that, cross the line, because that's where I was, my rebellious self. I went down Job's Lane purposely, you know, and I took my kids down Job's Lane purposely because I was going to break that cycle. I wasn't going to allow that mindset, even though it was there, you know, and I saw it. My parents were, you know, it wasn't a, you can't, but you felt it. I mean, another quick example was when I was in school, I was sitting across this guy. He was white. This is in the 70s. I'm dating myself. And we were in study hall, and we kind of started liking each other. Right. And he asked me to the prom. I went home, and my parents said I couldn't go. And, you know, I never asked why. Back then, you know, you really was, you know, subservient to your parents. You say no, they say no. But even that, I thought about that. You know, they didn't want me to go with him because he was white. Or whether they didn't want, I don't know. Never asked the reason. I never asked.
Did you end up going to the prom at all?
I ended up going to the prom with a local guy in my neighborhood, and it was horrible.
Oh.
It was horrible. But the great thing about it was, we danced. Oh. His name was Mark. He came over to me. He said, "Can we dance at least?" I said, "Sure." So we did have a dance. Okay. But, you know, that whole dynamics was interesting because it was during the time when it was changing a little bit. You know, it was getting to that change. We were dealing as kids, but I think our parents still had issues. I know my mom did. You know, my parents did. They flat out told me I couldn't go.
Yeah. Well, my mother makes a really, I mean, she's pretty upfront about the fact that she married my father because she's Jewish, and she really, I think she experienced anti-Semitism, and she really didn't want us to go through that. And so there's this whole thing of, we were invited to a dance, and she said, "You realize Jews are not invited to this dance, but because you're only half Jewish, you can go."
Wow.
So, you know, I put on the dress and I went, and I think within 10 minutes, I felt so out of place there. And I thought, I don't want to be at a party that my mommy couldn't go to. I understood that she was trying to expose me to something, that I, being only half Jewish, I could go there. But part of me felt like, this isn't right. And I called my stepfather and I said, "Could you pick me up? I want to leave." It was a horrible experience for me. you know, I guess even at 13, I thought that's not right.
But you know, we only got like 2 minutes left.
Oh,
This time
really?
goes so
Oh,
fast.
yeah.
But I want to also, before I finish, I want to mention about the art therapy, because a day or two later afterwards, Nina being an art therapist, I still was going through a lot of changes. And I just want to show real quick one of the things that I did, and it was such a great therapy for me. I don't know if the camera can get a hold of that, but it was really a great therapy for me. I have a few other things that I did too. I don't know if the camera can get a hold of that or not. There it is. But this was something that I did during my time of just getting through that process, you know. But it was just profound, you know. It was really relaxing, and I mean, it was times when I cried.
Yeah, you definitely.
It was deep, but it was so awesome because it was quiet, you know. We literally sat. We were there for 2 hours, maybe, and we just took our time, and you were so awesome for me, you know. And I really, like I said, we didn't even talk about how we met. We met, you know, in May, and here we are, you know. But before I go, I want to talk about what the closing statement I want to just say is, we can only go forward when we learn and live together. And that's what I think that Nina and I have done. And I think we can be trophies. I don't want to call it trophies. I don't know, examples. I don't know which word you want to use would be good for that.
Models.
Models of what can happen. And the best thing I want to say is how we were open and honest with each other. You were able to let me be angry, and you were able to deal, and you were being honest with how you were feeling. We kind of got through it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the best thing, because we could have been a part where we would have never spoken again. Yeah. I don't think that would have happened because of who we are, but that could have happened.
Well, you said Debbie asked.
Yes, yes. But it was a great thing. And so I appreciate you, Nina,
I appreciate
my new
you,
friend.
Brenda.
And I think we would get a lot, people would get a lot out of this show when they watch this show. So thank you again.
So. Thank you.
And thank you. And have a wonderful day.